I mean, it's so destructive. It's personally terrible, and it's simply horrible for families. It's horrible for families. My mother was incredibly social. I mean, she was always the one who was out and about, but with great strength. And she was way ahead of her times, and it was just taken from her. I mean, she had Alzheimer's, and her fate was sealed.
Alzheimer's is not the gradual dementia that everybody thinks it is. It goes in another direction. It's frightening. It's physically frightening, and it's terrifying. The
parts that just tore your guts out, and where you were absolutely helpless. I mean, she'd get up and start, in her house in New York, she'd just get up and start walking about, and then you got to the point where she got violent. There's always that period where people get violent.
All the paranoia and horror of it, and the physicality of it, and calling the police.
One of the reasons why we desperately need to cure this disease. The affliction, what it does to a family, the toll it takes. I see in my own family now.
I know many families where the son or the daughter simply come back. They've moved across the country to come home, and they have children, and then all of their children's education money gets spent taking care of.
The sad thing is you don't really have a good memory of your mom when you lose her this way. I remember she was feisty, and something about me makes me not want to go back that far to try to remember how nice I liked her with the coffee breath and stuff. I don't know what it is about human nature, and maybe it's just selfishness, but you pull back from people when they reach a certain point of distance.
It's not a hard subject for me to do something about, but it's a hard subject for me to talk about.
I'll never forget being home in Caribou and going to visit my grandfather at the nursing home and looking into his eyes and seeing no hint of recognition. And that was a very painful moment.
It is hard in the first several years to have your mother not know your name, to have your mother not recognize her husband of 50 years. But you adjust because you have to adjust. And when she walks out on the street, that first couple of times, and a neighbor has to bring her back to your front door, as much pride as your mother had and you had in your mother, you just have to accept the fact that you have to lock the front door now, double bolt it.
I can remember her downstairs playing Brahms and Chopin, other things, when we were going to sleep. She loved music, and I have a powerful need for classical music.
You know, it was my mom's dad who had Alzheimer's, and then my dad who had it. I certainly think about it. I think about Alzheimer's a lot. Every time I forget a name, every time I forget anything, a date. I don't get frightened, but I wonder.
I can remember when the first signs started appearing as early as around age 70, when she would repeat stories. And I remember, I've got 3 daughters, and particularly my younger one would always say, well, why does Grandma keep telling the same story over and over again? My mom hasn't spoken for 5 years. She's totally incontinent.
My father, in a very interesting twist of that generation, wouldn't tell us that she had it.
My father insisted on total denial, and so we accepted that until about 6 or 7 years into the disease.
And what the caregiver does mainly is keep the secret.
And I think that's how many families feel.
My father refuses to have anybody else other than himself provide the support. And so my mom's at home, my sister's working full-time at the house as well. And as much as it makes me pull my hair out at times, that this is, there are so many things, additional things we could offer to try to make it easier. But he's my dad, and he's going to do it his way.
I really enjoyed spending the hours with her. Just sitting with her. I'm so glad I did it. And then she had dad called. She had died about, a week later or something, 2 weeks later or something. But I do think that's something I would recommend. Just go take a week off. Tell the boss you got something important to do. And just go sit with the person.
We were all there with him and stayed with him and were there when he passed. I'll tell you, it's a great privilege to be able to be there.
Yes, I recall the last time that I saw her, and she did know who I was. And that's the shocking thing. That's the mystery that surrounds all of this. That's the light that suddenly came on, which I couldn't understand. It was 2 weeks before she actually died, and I was in her room outside of New York, and I went in, and she just looked up at me, and her eyes were suddenly clearer than usual, and she said, "Goodbye, Jay." And she hadn't said my name in a couple of years.